What's going on, guys? So I recently made a video going over some new Diablo 4 footage. And while this video had a primary focus on the Necromancer, there was also a lot of other hidden things in that video, like some new skills we hadn't seen before with the Barbarian and some Sorceress stuff and some Druids. Actually, I think a lot of the Druid stuff we had seen before, but really there was a lot of stuff in that video that was really interesting. So if you haven't seen that video, make sure you check that out. But the video we're going to look at today is basically the same video, so I'm not going to go through all of that footage. But in this video, there are some things about the Necromancer's Book of the Dead where they actually show us in detail what they're going to be doing with the Necromancer Book of the Dead. So yeah, let's stop messing around and get started. Okay, so almost 3 minutes into the video, and this is our first glimpse of the Book of the Dead. Now, to me, this version of the Book of the Dead very clearly looks unfinished. It looks like a pre-alpha version of the Book of the Dead. They must have just recently made this thing. It doesn't really have much polish. It doesn't really have any icons yet. And also, there are very few options, which you'll see here in a couple minutes. Really, you pick one of these things and you have like 3 different options, which honestly, that's not much. In 2022 or 2023, when this game releases, having 3 options, that's not really much at all. But I really do think they have a great foundation for a class mechanic for the Necromancer. But let's continue. So first they check the Skeletal Warriors tab. And this is kind of funny. We made a video talking about the different types of skeletons and stuff in the initial Necromancer reveal video. And we actually made some assumptions about like the skirmishers, the defenders, and the reapers. We didn't have names for them at the time. Basically everything we said was pretty spot on, that there are going to be different skeletal warriors that you can summon, and each one of them will have different attributes or skills related to those summons. So here we see that they are hovering over the defender skeletons. These defenders are shield bearers with 15% increased life. With their upgrades, every 10 seconds, your skeletal defenders negate the next instance of direct damage they would take. And then I guess at the next upgrade, it you increase the amount of thorns that defender warriors inherit from you from 30% to 50%. And I actually think this is a thing in Diablo 3 with skeletal warriors and thorns. Actually, give me a second. I'm going to look it up and see if I can find it. Okay, here, like I was saying, in Diablo 3, the Necromancer has a passive where your minions gain 200% of your thorns. I'm sure there are some builds around this type of thing, clearly. I mean, all I did was Google Diablo 3 skeleton thorns, and this was the first thing that came up. But yeah, they have a passive that gains, you know, some sort of your thorn damage, I guess, right? And it says here on the video clearly that they're following some sort of similar design. Now, as someone that's never played a thorn-based skeleton build in Diablo 3, I have no idea if that's really good game design or not. And lastly, you can see that you can choose to sacrifice your skeletal defenders for 15% non-physical resistance, and obviously you can no longer summon skeletal warriors. This is interesting because this means you can no longer summon any of them, right? You can't summon skirmishers or reapers, and obviously you can't summon defenders. But this is pretty cool because it allows you to choose the buff you would gain from sacrificing, I don't know, a skirmisher or a reaper or a defender, right? Like maybe you already have a lot of physical resistance from a piece of gear or some other skill you use, and so you don't want to sacrifice the defenders, but maybe you want to sacrifice the reapers for whatever bonus they give you. So I could be wrong here. It looks like maybe you have to pick one of the upgrades, like you don't get both. It looks like, so it says select an upgrade, right? So you only get one or the other. You don't get both. Like I said before, very, very, very bare bones, right? You have 2 options. This interface is atrocious. By the way, this interface is very fucking ugly. So I really don't think this is going to be what it looks like at the end. But you know, they are very close to finishing Diablo 4, but at the same time, they're still a ways away. So this could change significantly between here and release. Fingers crossed, though, we do get some more options. But let's continue and see if they show off any of the other options here. Okay, so they go into the Skeletal Mages next. They quickly went over one. I think we may have just missed it. Skeletal Mages? Okay, pause. So this is Cold. So chills and freezes enemies, no surprise there. And the upgrades are, each time your Cold Mages damage enemies with their primary attack, you gain 2 essence. That's kind of cool, right? So like if you don't want to have to run around using your primary ability all the time, like your left click or whatever, to just generate essence, which is kind of like this weird playstyle of generating spend. You can just summon your mages and have them generate it for you and just spend all the time, which is pretty fun, right? Especially if you can get some items that might give you more essence every single time your mages use or hit with their primary attack. And the other upgrade is enemies who are frozen by or damaged while frozen by your cold mage's primary attack are made vulnerable for 3 seconds, which, I don't know, probably makes them take increased damage. You know, it's Diablo, so it's probably like vulnerable means they take 15% increased damage. Oh, it says right here. Oh, this is a sacrifice. Okay, so if you sacrifice your mages, you deal, I guess specifically your cold mages, you deal 15% increased damage to vulnerable enemies, but you can no longer raise skeletal mages. So this is interesting. So we don't know what vulnerable means in Diablo 4. At least I don't know off the top of my head. We might have some information on that somewhere in the ether, right? Someone may have found it or picked it out of a video or something. But if vulnerable doesn't mean they already take increased damage, because basically, if vulnerable means they take increased damage, then they're already taking increased damage, then why would you sacrifice cold minions to just gain the flat increased damage? If you're already gaining that from the cold mages, unless if obviously you just don't want to deal with having mages. But yeah, I think they go on to another one. I'd be interested to see what the shadow one is. Hopefully they show us that. Okay, so we have Bone. Uses its own bones as projectiles, dealing heavy damage for a life cost. So they cast their own life to cast these bones, or they use their own life. The first upgrade is reduce the life cost of your bone mage's attacks from 15% to 10% after being alive for 5 seconds. After being alive for 5 seconds, bone mages deal 40% increased damage. Okay, so I guess the whole goal here is to keep them alive as long as possible, so that or past that 5-second marker, so they're gaining that 4%, a 40% increased damage bonus for an extended period of time. That seems like it could be kind of a fun playstyle. I don't know how else they would play into that. Maybe there's some items, like it would be fun if it was a more active playstyle of like, I want to keep them up alive longer so you can buff them. We've already confirmed through the gameplay footage that there are skeletal buffs, right, for your minions, skeletal minion buffs. So there could be some that heal them. There could be some that make them more resistant to damage or hurting themselves, possibly. So yeah, maybe there could be like an active playstyle of constantly keeping them alive, which could be kind of fun, right, for some people. And the next upgrade is each time a bone mage dies from its own attack, they leave behind a corpse and fortify you for 2,188. But it has to die from its own attack. It cannot die from any other means. At least that's what it seems like with the wording here, right? So you don't want to like just throw them in and have them die immediately. You want them to die by their own hand. If you want to be utilizing this Fortify effect. Fortify, if any of you play Path of Exile, is something that you are already familiar with, at least in that world. It's something completely different. But it is interesting to see kind of like that similar wording here in D4, like Fortify, oh, are they stealing this from Path of Exile? It doesn't seem like it though. It just seems like, an absorb effect, right? So you'll probably just get like this kind of this shield of damage that gets taken away from you before your health if you get hit by something. And then here they have the sacrifice option, which is your overpower damage is increased by 30%, but you can no longer raise skeletal mages. What is overpower damage? I have no idea what it is. Maybe it's just a type of damage. I don't know. Okay, next they go into the golem tree, and we have the 3 bone, blood, and iron golems. Iron is making a return, which is awesome. I love the iron golems. I am sad though, because it appears to me that the iron golem is more of just an aesthetic more than what we have known the iron golem to be in Diablo 2, which is, you know, using an item on the ground to turn it into this iron golem that gets like these attributes and things from the item you made the iron golem from. Which I really wish we could get that kind of fantasy back. But to me, the Iron Golem and the whole idea of the Iron Golem in Diablo 2 was really, really cool. It was just, it was just poorly implemented, that's all. And so I was really hoping when I saw the Iron Golem in the gameplay footage, I was like, man, I really hope they are giving us that class fantasy back with the Iron Golem, where you could use items to make this really, really strong golem that either runs around and buffs you or, you know, just annihilates the screen. But it does not look like that's what we're getting here. So first, we have a look at the bone golem. The first upgrade is each time your bone golem takes up to 20% of its maximum life as damage, it sheds a corpse. Which, you know, I guess that could be kind of useful if you're somebody who relies on corpses, especially in single target scenarios where there will be no corpses because you're not killing anything. I could see that being useful where maybe your bone golem is taking damage to a boss and it's dropping a corpse. But at the same time, if you're on a build, if you're playing a build that requires corpses, you're probably going to want to have other means to summon corpses because this doesn't seem very reliable, right? And the next one is your bone golem gains 10% maximum life and the amount of thorns they inherit from you is increased from 30% to 50%. So it looks like baseline, some of these minions or all of your minions just gain 30% of the thorns that you have, like just no matter what. Now is 30% to 50% a big increase? I have no idea, you know, because, you know, I'm used to Diablo 3 numbers, at least when seeing things like thorns. And as we saw earlier, it was gain 200% of your thorns. It's, you know, that's a big difference between 200% and 50%. So, or just an additional 20% here. And lastly, you can sacrifice it to gain 10% increased attack speed, but you lose the ability to summon a golem. And it looks like I don't think they're going to have cast speed in Diablo 4. It kind of just seems like attack speed is just this all-encompassing, you know, attack cast speed related stuff, right? So like if you have 10% increased attack speed, I guess you can just assume that's applied to your casting. I don't know how I feel about that. You know, I could be wrong. There might actually be faster casting and I might just be interpreting this wrong. I can't remember every single item that I've looked at in Diablo 4, but I really do hope that we do have more than just flat attack speed and that just applies to everything. But yeah, you know, whatever. Sacrifice it for 10% increased attack speed. I guess that's all right. And then we have the blood golem, which drains life from nearby enemies. Your blood golem absorbs 15% of damage you would take. That is the first upgrade. And the second upgrade, while healthy, your blood golem gains 25% damage reduction and 25% increased damage. I feel like we don't know enough yet about the golems. Like, I think we've seen some, like, the iron golem can, like, slam the ground and it does, like, some AoE attack. But, like, will you be able to, like, if I wanted to do an iron golem build, can I do that? Like, will we be able to do that? Will I be able to have this golem that just runs around and just kills everything on the screen for me? It kind of seems like not really. Like, they seem more of, like, utility than something you build around, which is kind of how I remember them being in Diablo 3, which is a little sad. You know, I want more, I want to be able to do like funky things in Diablo 4, you know? I don't want the Diablo 3 approach to build design, but you know, I could be wrong. And you know, we just don't know enough yet, you know? We'll just have to wait and see. And lastly, you can sacrifice your blood golem and gain 10% increased max life, but obviously you can't summon golems anymore. And lastly, here we have the Iron Golem. The Iron Golem slams the ground and stuns enemies. And the first upgrade is every 5th Iron Golem attack causes a shockwave, dealing 16% damage to the primary enemy and enemies behind them. What's interesting here is that the damage numbers seem to be very low, especially considering that the character in these video, or in this particular video right here, is max level, because you can see that they are Paragon level 100. But if it's basically scaling like the same way that damage scales in Diablo 3, then we could probably expect damage numbers to be pretty high, regardless of them starting off this low. The second upgrade is your Iron Golem's slam attack also makes enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. Once again, not entirely sure what vulnerability does in Diablo 4. And lastly, you can sacrifice it and you deal 30% increased critical strike damage, but you lose the ability to summon a golem. Yeah, so basically you get 30% increased critical strike multiplier. You know, like I was just talking about, if Diablo 4 is going to have just multiplier on top of multiplier on top of multiplier and not have separate, you know, additive and multiplicative damage like games like Path of Exile and Last Epoch have, then, you know, it's just going to be like, give me flat or give me percent increased on anything and everything I can get my hands on. you know, they probably don't feel like, I would assume the Diablo 4 developers don't want to just straight up take things from other games, even though they are good ideas, you know, like having just multiplicative or just flat added damage, because people would be like, oh, that's in Path of Exile, they're taking that from Path of Exile. And you know, I have nothing against developers like cherry picking the good things from some games. You know what I mean? Like some of the designs that are more interesting. Obviously, they want the game to be its own thing and feel separate from a game like Path of Exile and offer its own and have its own identity. But I think they can still have its own identity and still create engaging gameplay and have engaging game designs that they could take from other games, you know, without completely ruining the identity of D4. And that's it, guys. That's really all we got to see of the Book of the Dead. And my final thoughts on the Book of the Dead are that it seems interesting. As I've said like 4 times in this video, I think it's a good foundation for a class mechanic, but it seems so bare bones, and I think they could make it way more interesting than this. Like, give players way more options. You know, why only keep them 1 or 2? Like, when I see this, I see console. I see this is designed for Xbox players. This, which to me, I know this is wrong, right? But it almost seems like developers have this idea in their head when they make a game for console players that console players are fucking stupid and they can only handle like certain degrees of complexity. So they have to dumb everything way the fuck down for console players. And I hate that. I don't know why. Like, you see it in games like Destiny, you know, like to me, like a lot of people like Destiny, and I just can't get into it because it just seems so dumbed down. It's like they have these really small skill trees. It's boring. I don't know. It's like, I feel like a game like Destiny could be so much better if they weren't afraid to add a little bit of complexity to the game, have bigger skill trees. And I feel the same about this particular system right here. Obviously, we have the Paragon system, we have the talent tree, and we have like itemization and stuff. That's all going to have all of their own layers of complexity mixed in with the class mechanic. But that doesn't mean that the class mechanic needs to be this simple. I get that this, like I said earlier, this appears to be a very early version of the Book of the Dead, and I'm sure we could expect a lot of this to change, at least visually. But fingers crossed they give us more than this, because I don't really know how they would scale this without it taking up a lot of room. I mean, personally, I think what they could do is you just click on, say you wanted to do something with your Bone Golem, you click on Bone Golem, and that opens up a whole nother page, right? That's a whole page with its own little tree, and maybe you could upgrade it or do like fun things like that. I know that's like a lot of work, you know, for every single little summon, but at the same time, players would definitely thank you for that, you know? So I feel like great foundation. If the developers over time add more to the game, then they could add more to this Book of the Dead system, and hopefully, you know, in like a year's time after the game is released, there are a lot more options. We have no idea. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it, and let me know in the comments what you think about the Necromancer's Book of the Dead. And until next time, I'll see you later.